I'd love to kind of get us started with just a preview of the experts who are going to be joining me today. OneGoal is really grateful to work with these amazing individuals through our partnership with Milford High School. So please help me welcome Joshua Otland, the principal at Milford High, Anne-Marie Franson, the program director, the OneGoal program director at Milford High School, and Eduardo Sampaio, a OneGoal alum from Milford High and a current student at Eastern Connecticut State University. Please show them love in the chat, drop a note in there for them and for giving of their time and their talent to today's conversation. I'm really excited for the opportunity to learn from all these brilliant folks. I have the chance to get to work with them some through the work in Massachusetts, but I know they have so much to offer you all and have thought deeply about all of this, particularly some of the knowledge and experience regarding how we can bridge the gap for first generation students. And they're here today to share all of that. Before we jump fully into our discussion, I want to just do a quick overview of OneGoal. We want to start with one of our fellows. This is Elijah, a OneGoal fellow from Massachusetts. And like many students, Elijah really didn't know where to start when it came to thinking about his future. Most students need more support and guidance to find their post-secondary pathway, to find their aspiration and their why for what they want to do and who they want to be in the world. And yet, on average, public school students receive only 38 minutes of college admission advice from their school counselors. And we know that is simply not enough. This brief amount of time is really not sufficient for young people navigating the complexities and the challenges of the college process, of imagining what your post-secondary future might be, especially for students from underserved and under-resourced communities. It's clear to all of us at OneGoal that students need much more support to successfully manage their post-secondary journey. So our vision is that every student will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspiration. We know that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. So today, 22% of students from low-income communities earn a post-secondary degree compared to 67% of their peers from higher income areas. Students participating in the OneGoal program improve their results in high school and on their post-secondary path through all of the different opportunities that we provide. Our mission now is to lead the movement to transform post-secondary advising and support. We work with communities across the country primarily through two types of partnerships. First, our direct impact model, which is a daily class for high school juniors and seniors that also provides an extra year of support during the transition to post-secondary education. Just like math and English are taught during the school day, we believe post-secondary planning must be taught with equal rigor and that teachers and staff can be supported to effectively deliver that knowledge and lead students through that process. Second, our OneGoal Leadership Network provides expert coaching and a community of learning for school and district leaders. We help them build and strengthen the systems and structures that will lead to increased post-secondary outcomes and close equity gaps for their students. This year, we'll reach over 87,000 students indirectly through the OneGoal Leadership Network, and we have 275 district and school leaders are participating in the OneGoal Leadership Network across 57 partners in 7 states. You can learn a lot more about all of our work and our programs by visiting our website, which will be dropped in the chat in a second. So now that you know a little bit more about OneGoal, I'm really excited to transition to our purpose of the webinar today. Given your experience, please use the chat to share what do you see as the biggest barrier for first-generation students in achieving their post-secondary goals. Take a second to think about that. Please type that into the chat. What do you see as the biggest barrier facing first-generation students in achieving their post-secondary goals? Something around social capital and networking, yes. Thank you for sharing that. Other folks, please take a sec. Let us know, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers? Not even knowing where to start, 100%. Money, yep, exposure, yes, thank you. Believing it's possible, all of that, absolutely. As we see some of these responses coming through, overload of information, yes, that resonates deeply with a lot of the student experience. As we're starting to see some of these responses come through, thank you for taking a moment to do that. All of this resonates with our experiences in schools across the country. We hope that the strategies we share with you today will help to overcome some of those challenges and the stories that we share and all of that. Big picture, we want to start with a little bit of just understanding and level setting. What are some of the challenges we know that are unique to first generation students? First, many first generation students face challenges because they don't necessarily have sort of that family history. And I think some folks have talked about that. So even just to draw on some of the processes like completing the FAFSA, applying for college, all of those steps that it requires, understanding how to diagnose and make sense of financial aid packages can all be overwhelming and confusing without any guidance. We also know that cost is a significant barrier for many first generation students. Concerns about tuition, housing, and the other expenses that come along with successfully navigating college, and even just the burden of having to think about that all the time when you really wish you could just be studying. And so really understanding the complexities there. We also know that first generation students frequently experience what we would call imposter syndrome and may feel isolated or unsupported once they begin their post-secondary journey. Balancing family responsibilities, cultural expectations, academic pressures, all of that can add to the stress. Many students and families are also unaware of the full range of post-secondary options. So just the exposure, including community colleges, vocational programs, apprenticeships, what we would also call as progressive pathways. This lack of awareness can also serve to limit their choices or lead them to choose options that may not align with their goals or their needs. Students from underrepresented backgrounds often face systemic barriers such as biases in admissions processes or limited access to advanced coursework and extracurricular opportunities, limiting their choices before they even get to make them. These inequities compound the challenges they face in achieving post-secondary success. Our hope is that by naming these and better understanding the challenges, we can also then better support students in overcoming them. The good news is we believe there are some really great actionable strategies, and that's what we'll discuss today to help address these barriers and open pathways for success. So now that we've talked about some of the challenges and we could go deeper and deeper into that, we also really want to transition and start thinking about strategies and what's most practical that schools and educators can take on, use to support students in their journey to post-secondary success. The first one is mentorship. And I think this came up in the chat before, but mentorship programs can have a really transformative impact. Pairing students with mentors, whether it's a teacher, counselor, or even near peer older students, and this was something that came up in the chat before, provides them with guidance, encouragement, and a trusted person to help them navigate the often confusing processes of college applications, career planning, and even the transition into post-secondary. Mentors can be especially impactful when they share similar backgrounds or experiences with the students they support. So I know someone had talked in the chat about the feelings of shame or maybe embarrassment, or maybe you did something wrong, but a mentor can really help shine a light on that, and particularly someone who's lived through some of the same experiences. The second is around financial literacy and how crucial that is for first generation students. Many students struggle to understand the true cost of higher education. It is complex. It is not easy to understand or diagnose how to complete the FAFSA or how to interpret financial aid packages. Offering workshops, one-on-one counseling, and hands-on FAFSA completion events can empower students and their families to make informed decisions about their post-secondary education and all the steps they need to take towards that. Creating an inclusive school culture is another area, one that celebrates diversity and ensures representation in staffing and curriculum can make a significant difference. Again, talking about mirroring some of the student experience and the staff that are there. When students see themselves reflected in their educators and learn about pathways that others have taken, it builds a strong sense of belonging and a sense of what is possible. Schools should also ensure that all students feel welcome and supported in advanced coursework or extracurricular activities. And finally, using data is essential to uncover where equity gaps might exist and ensure resources are directed to where they're needed most. Schools can track metrics like FAFSA completion rates, post-secondary enrollment, academic outcomes to identify the disparities and adjust strategies accordingly. Data helps create accountability and it drives progress towards equity. By implementing these strategies, schools can create an environment where first-generation students feel supported, valued, and prepared to overcome barriers and achieve success in their post-secondary journey. So that was a lot. But now I'm very excited to invite Eduardo Sampaio, a OneGoal alum and current student at Eastern Connecticut State University, to join me and share sort of firsthand some of his own experience. So Eduardo, we shared a lot about the barriers, we shared some of the strategies, but I really want to hear directly from you. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? What were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and what kinds of support made the biggest impact on helping you achieve your goals so far?
Hello everybody. Like Adam said, my name is Eduardo. I am what's it called? I'm in my third semester here at Eastern Connecticut. Um, and a little bit about my journey as a first generation student. I want to say it started off in my third year or like towards the end of my third year, beginning of my fourth year, my senior year at high school, in which I was sort of reached at that moment. I was like, okay, things are starting to get like a little bit more serious. I need to start thinking a little bit more about the future. I met a little bit with my counselor, and she provided we were talking about earlier. Someone mentioned in the chat. It was like this overload of information about FAFSA and all these things. And I was like, okay, I need to take a deep breath. I need to sort of put things all on the table and figure out what I was going to go from there. And that's when I was introduced to the OneGoal program, which that was one of my biggest helps throughout high school, which helped me decide if I wanted to go maybe from things that were so small to things like that were bigger to like if I wanted to go to a bigger school or a smaller school or even what's it called? What my major would be. So things like that. Once I got those things sorted out, I was fortunate enough to was able to be provided with resources such as scholarships to apply and like step by step sort of forming that pathway towards my secondary education. But I think one of the biggest challenges I faced coming to school and coming to university was from Massachusetts. So that was the biggest thing for me at first was going out of state for the first time, moving away from my family, and sort of navigating an unfamiliar system. I come from a Brazilian and Latino background, and coming from a community like the town that I was in, which was Milford. Coming from that community, which was so full of diversity. Coming to school here in Connecticut was strange at first because people like the cultural differences a lot of the times, and I struggled with trying to fit in. Sort of, well, what's it called? I am white passing, and so a lot of the times when I introduce myself as Eduardo, people like looked at me strange, or I've had people ask me in a way as in like, oh, like, are you sure? Um, like is that your real name? Like are you from Mexico? Or like certain like conversations that I normally at my community with Milford wasn't never like something up to discussion. But I found a lot of benefits coming to school here at Eastern as well because I started to navigate a lot of my opportunities that I was given, such as like I spoke to specific advisors that helped me understand a little bit more how to navigate, like sort of pick classes. And if I struggled a little bit with financial aid, they showed me like, hey, this is the person that you call for financial help. Like this is the benefits that you can get. So I sort of navigated that in a way as in like, um, and I think that's also one of the benefits to being a first generation student is that there's no certain pathway that you have to follow. Like sometimes your parents set out, oh, you have to do this and this and this A and B. So you sort of have to form it yourself. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things to do. And because you find out what's really works for you, because sometimes what works for your parents or what works from the people that came past you doesn't work as well as it would for you. So
Yeah.
I think that was those was one of the biggest struggles, but I was not, I wouldn't say easily able to overcome them, but it's something that if you sometimes take a breath, sit down, and find the specific people that you can rely on that every school provides, it's one of the biggest important things that you have to do. I also was able to fall back on my advisors from OneGoal my senior year. Shout out to Miss Franson. She was a big help. So yeah, that I'll finalize just by saying that it's like the struggles are there 100%, but it's also we have to look at it as in a way of you're forming your own path and you get to do it your own way. And that's the important part of it.
Well, I thank you. And I'm excited when we get back to the panel because we'll bring Miss Franzen in and we'll get to dive a little bit deeper into that. But I really appreciate a couple things that I heard there. One is it's not just the steps only, but it's the steps and the decisions. And there are just so many of them, right? And I think we sometimes just think about, oh, you have to do the FAFSA, you have to do this. But underneath all of those are a set of decisions that you have to make. And that is both a challenge. And I love what you brought in, which is like, and it's an opportunity, and it's something that you get to chart your course, and that you're bringing that sort of like to all of it. And I think there's so much wisdom in that. And so thank you for sharing that, and the power of mentorship and the connections you can have between high school and college, and all of that is really powerful. So we'll get back to it because there's a lot more that we could get into from there. Wanted to, as we transition and get towards our full panel, wanted to just share one powerful statistic that I think really highlights the importance of supporting first generation students, and why thinking about directing resources and support and all of that is critical. According to a report by the Pell Institute, only 27% of first generation students receive any assistance from their parents in completing financial aid forms. And that is compared to 57% of students with college educated parents. And so the data starts to showcase some of the challenges that students face and encounter, and where some of the supports and the opportunities come in for the educators and the rest of us. So we're going to hop into our panel in a minute. To start us off, I'd really like to just hear from each one of you. When you think about what does equitable access to post-secondary education mean to you, and why is it so important in your role or in your personal experience? And I'll kick it to you, Josh, first to kick us off, and then we'll move to Anne Marie and Eduardo.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. In terms of equitable access, I want to come at that somewhat indirectly. I think that a big part of post-secondary educational planning for students is getting access to insider knowledge. Adam, as you alluded to earlier, the post-secondary educational landscape or marketplace is incredibly confusing. I would say that it's definitely the most complicated decision that financial decision that these young adults have had to make at this stage in their life. And for many of their families, this is the most complicated financial decision that they will have made in their lives, investing in their children's education. And students who come from families where they have parents and guardians who have direct firsthand experience, lived experience in the American university system, they have that insider knowledge. And those students are at just a wild advantage over their peers who do not have guardians who have that lived experience. And so for me, I think equitable access is making sure that all of our students have equal access to that inside knowledge that allows them to critically evaluate the choices that are on the market. So I could say a lot more. Let me pause there and let Anne Marie and Eduardo jump in.
Appreciate that. Anne Marie, you want to, yeah.
Absolutely, Josh, I took the words out of my mouth. I absolutely agree with that. And I think even to speak a little bit more to our students' experience at Milford High School, and the students that I advise, and also my own experience, I think that low-income students have the most at risk here, and they have the most to lose. So just being by nature, virtue of being a low-income student, in addition to being a first-generation student, you not only have that lack of insider knowledge, but this is really high stakes. You might not have a suitable plan B. And so when you're making these decisions and thinking, well, if I go to college and I risk it and I plan on this investment, this long-term investment, and things don't necessarily work out, I don't have a safety net. And I think it's that lack of safety net that a lot of our low-income and first-gen students have or are facing that make the obstacle a little bit too great. And so they're less likely to take those risks by going and enrolling and persisting, because when the going gets tough, it's easier to take the safe route out. And a lot of times it's hard to sit in class when you know you could be making money. So it's hard to see the long-term outcome of the end goal when you know that you're sacrificing so much. And we know that low-income students are much less likely than their middle to high-income peers to fill out the FAFSA form, and that so much money is being left on the table in terms of Pell grants and other grants and scholarships. And so being able to have like a mentorship or something more. I see a question in the chat that talks about counselors having only on average 38 minutes. So how do we rectify these students not being able to have the resources they need? And I think one of the awesome things that OneGoal does provide is a mentorship and a closer community and relationship, so that when the going gets tough, like Eduardo said, sometimes I get a really panicked phone call, but sometimes it's just helping students remind them what their why is and what their end goal is so that they can stay the course.
Yeah. Thank you. Love that. Eduardo.
There's, to be honest, there's not much more to say, because they like settle everything down, but basically also looking from an aspect of like Miss Franson was saying, to sort of have a reminder of why we're doing what we're doing and why we're here in a way. It's also coming from a different background. We always hear like from different culture parents always expecting you to, once you're out of high school, a lot of the kids think that the only option is to go work and to go into the job field, and sort of because they don't, it's not they don't know any better, but it's sort of like that's what's been planted on them, like from their parents or from even their environment themselves. So having that opportunity to sort of sit down with them and sort of talk to them about what plan A and plan B could be like for each student, like that college is an option for them, and explaining that and sort of giving the students those options, I think that's one of the most important things.
I love that. And I think what, is underneath all of that is like exposure, opportunity, and then also just the like, how do we open up and make visible the things that are invisible to so many people, and like what does that look like? So Josh, kind of going back to you, you are principal of Milford High School, you sit as a school leader, and you really see from where you sit sort of the firsthand, the sort of the challenges that so many students at your school face in navigating the path to post-secondary. We talked a little bit about barriers. I'm curious if, what do you see sort of most frequently about the barriers your students are facing, particularly the first generation students at Milford? And as the school leader, how have you set about trying to address those and making sure that those don't limit students' options?
Sure. So I think the barriers that I see and the ones that I'm most concerned about us trying to address as a school right now are financial barriers and also what I would call personal barriers. I'm actually less concerned about the academic barriers. I think that our high school, like many high schools in the United States of America, we're actually quite good at training students as academicians to get ready for the academic demands they're going to meet in college. Where I think that high schools have traditionally fallen short, and I think this was the case for our school, is that we've not done enough helping students get financially ready for college. And we've not done enough to help them get personally ready for college. So we talk about personal readiness. Anne Marie was just talking about, students knowing their why, students having a really clear understanding of why they're doing this. To Eduardo's point, students are feeling a lot of pressure to start earning immediately. Students need to have an understanding personally that there's a long-term return on investment, and that foregoing earnings for 2 to 4 years can pay huge dividends down the line for them. That is not self-evident to young people or to older folks. There needs to be a lot of education to help students understand, why am I doing this? Why is this sacrifice worthwhile? And then I think on the financial readiness, this is the one that I see as being just the most daunting for students and families. I think it's really important for all of us in education to be clear-eyed about the fact that the tremendous oversupply that exists in higher education right now has left many institutions in a very precarious fiscal position, such that, and it saddens me to say this, but it's true, many institutions of higher education are engaging in predatory admissions practices and financial aid practices with students in a desperate grab to generate revenue. And it's, we talked about this overload of information facing our students right now. It is so challenging for even well-educated, experienced adults to be critical consumers about where they're going to get a solid return on investment, where they're going to get good value, which schools are actually going to be affordable and which are not. And this has not conventionally been part of the high school educational program, right? We teach students English, math, social studies, science, world language. We don't teach them about the higher education marketplace in the United States, and we don't teach them about the finances of higher education. And we're asking students to try to navigate these incredibly complicated waters with just the bare minimum of adult support. And I just don't think that's adequate. We need to be providing students with explicit, direct instruction in the financial aspects of post-secondary planning. And in addition to providing them with that explicit direct instruction, that needs to be complemented with individualized counseling, someone who knows the student really well, who the student has a lot of trust in, and who can work with them over a period of months, not hours, but over a period of months, to help the students engage in this very complex process of determining which schools might be financially within reach. And then once the offers come in, to make very difficult decisions around which of these offers actually represent my sort of best options right now. So it's, the personal readiness is huge, but for me, I think the financial readiness is really where schools need to step in to support first generation students if they're going to be successful after high school.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Josh. And I think one of the additional challenges is and I love how you named the sort of the higher ed marketplace. That's changing all the time also. So also then being, as a school or a mentor or whoever, nimble enough to know those changes and sort of provide that direct instruction. So I genuinely appreciate that. I will just say quickly, and we'll transition to Anne-Marie, but I still remember looking at a financial aid award, and the student was like, look, I got the presidential scholarship from this university. It's like, and it's this much. And I'm like, but how much is the total cost? And so it sounds good. It's the presidential scholarship. Is it renewable? How much is the total cost? Like, even just breaking some of that down. And so I really appreciate you bringing that in to the conversation, because I think it is so important. And most schools don't have a chance to do that as in depth. So Emery, I just want to kind of build off of Josh's perspective, and as the OneGoal program director at Milford High School, you work directly with OneGoal fellows there. What strategies have you found in that sort of, as Josh was talking about, that mentorship or that direct relationship working with students to help them overcome some of the barriers that they were facing and really build their confidence towards their post-secondary journey?
Absolutely. I have a few things that come to mind. And I think the first and probably most obvious to most of us as educators is building a really strong community, which I know can seem really obvious, but here in Massachusetts, most of our educators, I think 9 out of 10 educators in Massachusetts identify as white. And so we don't have representation. Students aren't seeing people like them in the classroom, considering 5 out of every 10 students identifies as a student of color. So anytime you can share a little bit about your story or identity, whether you come from a first generation background like myself, or anything that talks about the pathway or the struggle that you might have had, is going to help build that community by sharing your story. But secondly, building a community where we all talk about, and Eduardo knows sometimes a little bit too candidly, the struggles of maybe being low income or first gen, or having parents that are immigrants and are navigating the United States and American educational systems and financial aid systems for the first time. But also creating a bridge for these students to access this knowledge that other students kind of just get passed down to them. And so once students kind of have this access to this knowledge, you'll see a complete culture shift in the classroom. And so you'll see OneGoal students at Milford High School walking around very casually throwing around terms like FAFSA and Common App and early admissions as soon as their junior year. And so when you see this culture shift, it's really contagious. It's going to infect the whole community, but it signifies that you're trending towards creating really well-informed students. My ultimate goal is that students stop texting and calling me, not because they forgot about me, but because they have the tools and the confidence to make the decisions that they need to make on campus, whether that's navigating a major change, or they already know how to talk to the registrar or the financial aid office, or anything like that. I'm never offended when a student navigates that challenge without me. I'm so excited, because ultimately that's the goal, is that they've got the confidence and the ability to navigate the system on their own.
Love that. Emery, I know we'll shift gears in a second, but I want to just stay with something that you mentioned, because I think part of what you were talking about is actually, the how critical community is, how critical the relationship building piece is, and then how do you do that across lines of difference? And how have you approached that in your work as the OneGoal program director and building relationships and community with your students?
Absolutely. I think it sounds so silly, but even just finding the commonality. So, I mean, I look a lot different than a lot of my students. And even though I speak Spanish, I certainly don't speak Portuguese, which is what most of our students speak, which is often a joke. But just naming that we're all have many different identity markers and that they're all kind of playing at the same time. So that your experience as a female student is going to be different than a student who identifies as male and so on. But even just finding something that you can unify with and say, for example, one of the things that students talk about a lot is we examine the underrepresented minority graduation rate. So we just look at a given institution, are students like me graduating? And over the course of 4 to 6 years, and if so, why? Or seeking out completion support. So we talked a lot about finding Latin American student organizations or doing the work to see if those things were on campus before you get there, so that we can all kind of get behind like, well, I want to make sure that I find a place where I am accepted, no matter what that place might mean to you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that and appreciate that, like sort of the thoughtfulness that has to go into that for each student's journey, because everyone's bringing their own sort of complex identity to it. I'm going to switch.
Adam,
Yeah.
would it be okay if I jumped in for just a quick sec to
Yeah,
add
please.
Marie just
Yeah.
said, your question around like working across those lines of difference is a really important one, because those the differences in representation that we see with students and teachers that Anne-Marie spoke about, while it may be particularly sort of extreme in Massachusetts compared to other parts of the country, this is a challenge that we face nationwide, where the vast majority of our faculty members in public high schools are white, as our student population becomes increasingly students of color in this country. One of the reasons why Anne-Marie has been so successful of working across lines of difference, and one of the reasons why I recruited her to be our OneGoal teacher, is because I saw when Anne-Marie was teaching Spanish at our high school, and this is where it's I don't want to oversimplify it, but in some ways it is very elemental and very basic. Anne-Marie has always treated her students with just the highest level of respect and dignity, and that bridges the difference between cultures and ethnicities and identities very, very quickly. So students, in my experience, are less concerned about the way that the adults working with them identify themselves, and they're more concerned with the way those adults treat them. And when the adults working with them treat them with respect and dignity, you're able to bridge those gaps very, very quickly. And Anne-Marie is masterful at that.
I appreciate that. There's always like in anything in education, there's questions about cost. And treating young people with dignity and respect is actually free. Doesn't cost anything. It's just actually how you show up for them. And I think I appreciate that. And having been in Anne-Marie's classroom, I can also attest that is happening in there and 100%. So thank you for jumping in with that. Maybe that's a good time to bring Eduardo in, who is a student in Anne-Marie's OneGoal class. And want to just sort of go back to some of the conversation we were having before and what you were sharing, but really thinking about how your experience in OneGoal helped you prepare for and then navigate the transition to college. And I know you're now in your second year or your third semester. How did it both help you prepare for, but also really navigate that transition from high school into college?
So one of the biggest things that helped me prepare and navigate like the transition to college was the support that I received from my teacher, which was Miss Franson. And I say this with like truly like so much love in my heart, and like I thank her all the time, any chance I get. But it's just she made the classroom feel like more of like she was very personal. She made us, of course, keeping that relationship of mentor and student, but also I remember having conversation like days that come in and Miss Francis was like, okay guys, today is the day that we're gonna have sort of a difficult conversation in which we lay down like, okay, we're gonna have to talk about your financials. And it's like that sort of helped me understand that everybody around me and everybody in the classroom with me was sort of in the same boat. So I wasn't alone. And sort of like it was from big things like that, such as like how I can financially afford college and afford going to school, from like big conversations like that to smaller conversations, as in like I remember Miss Franson one day we had a whole classroom of just literally like, this is how you write an email, this is the proper email to do, like this is the format and this is how you do it. So sort of like from little preparations like that to bigger ones, that's what sort of prepared me and made me feel ready to go to college, to go to school, and to sort of move away from like anything that I knew was familiar or anything that I was comfortable with, to get out of my comfort zone in a way. And sort of that transition when coming here, she always made herself available, but also like I had to do initially for myself. Like I knew that like right now, like I am no longer a high school student, and this is my journey, and I get to sort of form my own path. So like first thing I remember was moving in and finding the financial aid in the bursar's office. Like that's that was the first place I had to go. But also getting to know and finding these like resources that aren't the same but were very similar that were provided by the school. So I was able to find what's it called, like sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I was able to find here like the opportunities program, in which provides students from a variety of different programs here at my school. So this semester it was introduced the Tri Alpha, which is an honor society for first generation students, in which I was inducted. And that was something that's really important to have, because it sort of showed me like, just like it did in my classroom, is and like these kids are all sort of in the same boat as me. It showed me a variety of students who are also experiencing and going through the same struggles and things that I did in my first year and now second year of school. But I think that's one of the biggest things was sort of Miss Franson always was personal with me, and therefore was very that was we formed a relationship in a way, as in like she could get very honest in a way, as in, and I didn't feel like I was like, oh, like who is this person talking to me, you know? And like she was very much like, hey, listen, these are struggles and these are things, but also like she did it little by little. It wasn't something that she was like one day came in and like it all changed. But no, like from sharing common like movies to like interests and foods, and so things like that, to build that relationship and to have that relationship in high school was what made me feel prepared, especially from schools like you were saying earlier. Like I was offered $80,000 scholarship for a school that was $60,000, so it was $20,000 a year. Yeah, I got that $20,000 scholarship. I had to pay $40,000 out of pocket. So like that was when the conversation on Miss Franson was like, I don't think that was the best like decision to go about. So I think forming those connections and forming um also like that relationship with students is very important. Like I also have OneGoal students who are in current like year one or year two reaching out to me that I know personally. Like I have family. Like my younger brother is a year one OneGoal fellow, and he's reaching out to me, being like, "Hey, how do I do this? What's my best like call it like what my best fit and everything." And so I sort of I'm also able to have this conversation with him, and it's interesting to see that students that come after me are getting this opportunity to learn all these from like financial struggles and like how to afford college to like social skills that sometimes lack in other aspects.
I love that. And there's so much there. I think one thing I do want to talk about is I think one of the burdens that we often hear back from some of our students is the feeling like there's no room to make a mistake. Like you're kind of walking on this tightrope financially, culturally, all of these different elements, which just makes it much harder to like fully dive in and enjoy the experience. And we've also talked about like how important it is to have your why and know sort of why you're there and what you're focused on. But I also know that in the last year and a half, you've decided to change slightly your major. And I'm just curious to hear you talk about sort of like what gave you the confidence to do that? How did that come about for you? And sort of what does that also make you think about when you're giving advice maybe to the next generation at Milford High School in terms of their experience?
So basically it was so I came to school. I major in psychology, with a concentration in cognitive neuroscience now currently. But when I came to school, my plan was to go major in psychology and then minor in education, sort of have that counselor, become a guidance counselor so I can help students like myself. But it's sort of like it took a few classes of biology and a few labs, and then I was like, oh, maybe um this is like maybe it is an aspect that I still want to like go into, but I really like working in research and learning about more of the scientific aspects of psychology. So what made me like sort of sit down and think was going to first thing I did was I reached out because I never like to do something without a plan. That's one of the things that I have learned in OneGoal, is just sort of like you don't have to have everything figured out 100%, but sort of like a step by step. So I sat down with a counselor here at school and I talked to her and I was like, hey, how how would I look like after like what would it look like after my undergrad? Would I have to go get my master's? Would I have to go get my PhD for a career in neuropsychology? Is that something that what's it called? Is it difficult? Like what does it look like? And sort of we had that conversation, and then I reached out to Miss Franson and I was like, hey, so listen, this is what I'm feeling. This is I sort of want to do that. And she was like, listen, it's completely okay. And one of the things coming to college too made me realize was that a change of major is literally sent by an email. It's something that's so common. Like it's something that's so quick, especially for your first 2 years of college. So one of the things that we learn in OneGoal is that um, by your sophomore year, technically you don't even have to declare a major because you're doing all your gen eds. So like your math, your English. I go to a liberal arts school, so a lot of what's it called, social aspects classes. Like my freshman year, I took anti-racism and social justice class, so that's a requirement in a way. So changing that major to something that's common, and that's the conversation that I was able to have with Miss Franson, and with my counselor here, and that sort of gave me the confidence to switch my concentration, switch a little bit of my major, and switch a little bit of my pathway to sort of go to a different job or apply for something completely different, you know.
Love it. It's great. And it sounds like you're making the absolute most of it, which is what's so important. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I know we're gonna have to wrap in a second, but I wanted to like give everyone one more chance to just share like what's, we've talked about a lot of different pieces, but like what's one change, big or small, that you think could have a huge impact on improving post-secondary outcomes for first generation students? And so I'll actually go in reverse order. Eduardo, I'll start with you. We'll go to Anne Marie, and then Josh, you get the last word on that.
I'm sorry, Adam, you cut off for a second, so I wasn't able to hear the full.
Oh, no, it's all good. It's just what's one change, big or small, that you think would make a huge impact for supporting the post-secondary outcomes of other first-gen students?
I think I one of the biggest changes that I could have is just sort of have that conversation and sort of be presented that conversation about what it looks like to go to school, to go to a post-secondary. And I think that's one of the biggest changes. It's a small one, but sort of to start a conversation and to have that with students, to introduce them to sort of like this could be your future, and why this could be your future, and why this is like a fine what's it called? Um an investment for you, for yourself. And that's one of the biggest things that I feel like could happen with students, and that students would benefit from in their post-secondary education.
Love it. Thank you.
Um, I agree with Eduardo, and I think I mentioned it before, but trying to create a culture of kind of preparedness, or a culture of post-secondary planning. And we've been in the works of shifting this at Milford High School, and just I think the earlier you start, the better, to Eduardo's point. So I don't think it's ever too soon to start thinking about and exposing students to different pathways. We've talked a lot about college today, but we also introduce students to different progressive pathways. So we talk about labor unions in Massachusetts. We talk about different trades. We look at the labor market. We start thinking about like, where are the jobs? And just encouraging students to explore, because every piece of information is good information. So knowing that you don't like something is just as important as knowing that you might like something. So just trying to make that shift towards here at Milford High School, or at whatever high school, we start talking about our future, and we start dreaming, and the sooner the better.
Love that. Thank you.
Adam, I think that the shift that we need to make in schools is around time. I think a student's high school career, depending on what state they attend high school in, over 4 years, it's somewhere between 3,500 to 4,000 hours in high school, actually in the building working with adults. If a student spends 4 hours working with an adult in school on their post-secondary plan, and they spend 4,000 hours in high school, right, that's 1/10 of 1% of their time in high school. 4 hours out of a 4,000-year career at high school, that is 1/10 of 1% in their high school. So I'd say let's multiply that by 10, and let's try to make sure that every student has at least 1% of the time they spend in high school where they're receiving support from adults and helping them figure out their educational plan for after high school. If we can go from 1/10 of a percent to 1%, we're going to be making a positive difference for students. If we the more time we can give it, the better our students are going to do.
I love that. And we can see what's possible in the story of Eduardo and so many other students, right? And so I love ending with that clear call to action. And if we can do that, we know what to do during that time. We have to make the time, and those are choices we get to make. Thank you, Josh, for that, Anne Marie and Eduardo, for sharing your incredible insights, experiences, and all of the things you've poured into this over the years. We couldn't be prouder to partner with you all. It's really inspiring to hear it reflected back, and all of the impactful work you're doing at Milford High School, and how we can all play a role in doing this work on behalf of first generation students. For those that want to dive a little deeper, we do actually have a case study with Milford High School to talk about some of the work that we've done. We'll drop that link in the chat, but highly recommend checking that out as sort of like somewhat of a playbook, and just to see the journey that we've been on together as partners. Once again, I want to just pause and thank our panelists. Please, if you can, jump in the chat, tell them thank you for their time. All of them have many other things. Eduardo has to go back and take 2 more finals before the semester closes. And I know Josh and Anne-Marie are busy as well. So really, please take a moment to thank them and make sure you let them know. And that truly is it for our webinar. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We encourage folks to follow OneGoal on social media, visit our website, reach out to us, learn about how we're trying to transform post-secondary advising and support, and how we can maybe partner. So we'll drop our website in the chat, but thank you all for your time, for your attention, and for your care. And again, thanks to our panelists. Really appreciate all of you all.